his ability, so to speak. He says that, I think, sort of tongue-in-cheek, because he was trained, what, as a Pharisee. So he knew the law. He's well-versed in it, trained. So he doesn't have much weakness there, in my estimation. But he came with fear and trembling. Now, I guess a lot of preachers, when they first encounter a congregation, they're trying to project a feeling of warmth, trust, knowledge. And in trying to do so, they're sort of currying favor with that congregation. They're potentially going to try to employ him, right? So what have we done as a congregation? Haven't we sort of cheapened that experience, so to speak, that a profession, a passion that a man has to preach the word, nothing but the word? Haven't we sort of cheapened that a little bit by making him have to get up here and put up a dog and pony show and make us feel entertained so that he can get a job, so he can sustain his family? And this is his passion. I think that's where Paul's coming from. Paul came to Corinth. He worked. As an apostle, he was entitled to being provided for. He should have had a place. He should have been able to have funds available to get food and whatnot. So in that sense, I sort of see what he's saying, but at the same time, I don't. It sort of confuses me. Then I read it down in the verse 6, going towards the end. We do, however, speak a message of wisdom among the mature, but not the wisdom of this age, or of the rulers of this age who are coming to nothing. No, we speak of God's secret wisdom, a wisdom that has been hidden and that our God destined for our glory before time began. None of the rulers of this age understood it, for if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. However, as it is written, no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind has conceived what God has prepared for those who love him. But God has revealed it to us by his Spirit. What is the secret of wisdom? I mean, do we just read over that and sort of just dismiss it out of mind? What's that secret of wisdom? The Spirit searches all things, even the deep things of God. For who among men knows the thoughts of man except the man's spirit within him? In the same way, no one knows the thoughts of God except the Spirit of God. We have not received the spirit of the world, but the Spirit who is from God, that we may understand what God has freely given us. This is what we speak, not in words taught us by human wisdom, but in words taught by the Spirit, expressing spiritual truth in spiritual words. The man without the Spirit does not accept the things that come from the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness to him, and he cannot understand them, because they are spiritually discerned. The spiritual man makes judgments about all things, but he himself is not subject to any man's judgment. For who has known the mind of the Lord that he may instruct him? But we have the mind of Christ. With that in mind, think about some of the Old Testament preachers. Jeremiah. He was fortunate enough to have been born under the King Josiah, a good king of Judah. Jeremiah was getting discouraged. The people of the time didn't listen to him. They didn't listen to his message to turn away from their wicked ways, to come back to God. So you can imagine, he's very, very discouraged. He was so discouraged that even when Judah was taken into Egyptian captivity, he went with them. But was his influence still there? That's something that we don't see and we don't read, but I imagine his influence was still being done. Do you know how many people you've influenced? No, we don't. But somebody has seen you, has heard you, or watched you do something, and is using your life, your message, to influence them. Yes? Mhm. Exactly. Mhm. That's it. Jesus. Yeah. That's it. I have heard a few sermons on the TV by these these pastors or whatever you want to call these people that profess to know the Bible, and they have done exactly that. The secret wisdom. I got something you don't know, and you have to listen to me to understand. And I'm not going to tell you everything. Why? Because knowledge is power. That's all it is when it comes down to it. And Paul's starting to get into this in the next couple of chapters. He's starting to go into what is some of the Corinthian problems: arrogance, pride, conceit, one-upmanship. You can keep on going. I'm better than you. I'm smarter than you. I've got talents you don't have. And I think that's what we as humans do. We try to one-up each other. What about Jonah? There's another preacher. God told him to go to Nineveh. He did not like that. Nineveh was a wicked, wicked city. He didn't think there was anybody in Nineveh that was worth saving. And so we all know what happened. He tried to hop on a ship to go away. And we know that the storm came up. The boat was either capsized or else he was thrown overboard. And the great fish swallowed him, spewed him back up where he started from. God's way will be done, period. So here Jonah was going to change God's mind a little bit. If I'm away from Nineveh, I can't preach there. Jonah went. Jonah did what God wanted him to do. What about Noah? Noah. For 120 years, they built that ark, him and his son. He preached that 120 years to the people. There's a lot of Bible archaeologists, historians, and authorities that say up at the time of Noah, there probably was no such thing as rain as we know it. Rain did not come down from the sky. The way the ground got moisture, a mist arose, and it was enough to water all the plants and trees and provide the water for drinking. So no such thing as rain. So you can imagine Noah. You people need to turn away from your wicked ways, come to God, because he's going to send the rain that's going to flood the world. Wait a minute. How stupid does that sound to the average person at that time? What is rain? It falls from the sky. They sort of laugh at that. And if you just extend that thinking just a little bit later on, for 120 years they're building this. Imagine the people were laughing and making fun of him all that time. Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. What more do you need? Yeah, with three sons, able-bodied. I mean, they're used to doing hard work, and so that they could do that. And I think it comes back to we as people look at this, and we tend to believe scientists and these people of advanced learned degrees. They tell us these things. There's no way you could build something like that because it's too big, too heavy, too massive, too complex. God was the architect. When he tells you to do something, you do it. It's that simple. Now imagine also, keep on going forward a little bit, when the animals started coming up and they're loading into the ark. People are going to show up, they will attend, and they see this, and you're going to have a whole big old barn of animals. What are you going to do about the smell and feeding and all this? Then all of a sudden the door closes and God seals the door. Then the rain starts happening. I imagine there was a sort of picnic circus out there. I mean, everybody's out there just laughing and whooping and just having a great time. Look at this fool, Noah and his family. Out of the whole world, only 8 souls were saved after 120 years of preaching. Now, I can also imagine a few of those, once the water starts getting a little deep, they're pounding on there, let us in, let us in. That sort of gives you a final statement. We are given many opportunities. When will the door shut on us? Yes. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
There's no way to know if let people on. I imagine probably was thinking, let them on, and God's word is final. I shut the door. You can't judge that. Say, we can't stay.
Nope. Yep. Yeah. And it's sad, but it's true. You can't save everyone. All you can do is present the word, and they have to make that decision. The Mormons baptize for the dead. And when I was teaching high school back in Indiana in the 70s, one of my 12 teachers that worked for me, he was Mormon. And I talked with him many times. I said, okay, Lewis, if you can baptize for the dead, then why don't you baptize for me? And he said, well, it doesn't work that way. I said, oh, so you are very selective on who you baptize for. And he said, yeah, we go back and do our family. I said, we're all family. And so his argument started breaking down right real quick. And he said, well, we just don't do those things. He had to hurry up and get back to class. I mean, it's funny how we do these things. But they practice that. They practice baptism for the dead. Because maybe my great-grandfather, he did not believe I could baptize so that he would have salvation now. Mm-hmm. Make certain that you're... I think that's going to be the biggest shock when we get to heaven, as to who's there and who's not. And really, we won't even care. Not really. Our eyes are going to be focused on God. Will I see my wife when I get there? I would love to see her again, but will I? I don't know, and it's not my concern. So what do you do? As humans, we have this passion and feelings for one another. I'd love to see you all, but at the same time, I don't know. Will we? Oh, we'll know each other because, yes. But at the same time, am I looking for you? No, I'm not looking for you to see if you made it. She made it. Jerry made it, No, I'm not going down and checking off a list to see who made it and who didn't.
But it's, hey, and that's, I think that's so contrary to our nature.
Yes.
Like no, I mean, think about it. When those people start pounding on that door, his first instinct is
open the door.
Let him in.
But he can.
God shut that.
Yeah.
Get off it. God saved you.
And, that raises up a lot of questions a lot of people have is, wait a minute, God's already figured out who's going to be saved? No, he already knows who's going to be saved. He already knows the future. That's right. We choose that salvation. Yeah, but I think God would have influenced him to do it one way or another. God's will be done. Yes, but it's still been the same story, just maybe a different name, maybe. Yep. Well, we have a lot of verses that, when we take a look at some of these verses, we need to temper our reading of these with our own experiences and our own feelings, because sometimes that skews us away from the actual truth. And like I said when I first started teaching, I say things that are a little bit controversial in a way, but I'm not trying to steer you off. I'm trying to keep you going straight. But I want you to think about, this is what happens when you start veering off. It only takes one step off the path, and it gets a little harder. And then you take another step. Well, it was a little hard, it's still hard, and so you keep on going. You're way off the path now. So we got to be careful how we see things and how we think things. Okay? God's secret wisdom for those who love him. We can't understand him because it's spiritual mind. The apostles, they understood. They were given this gift of the Spirit to understand so they can tell us. We now have the Bible. It's complete. There's no new revelations to come. Everything we have is complete. Even with the feeblest of minds, you're able to read and understand. And you might need a little bit of a guide sometimes from somebody. I listen to Chuck every Sunday. You do too. Does he get it right 100%? Yes, pretty much, yes. But there are some things that I'd like to argue with him on one point. Is that right or is that wrong? Maybe by arguing with him, I'll come to a better understanding. Or maybe he might come to another understanding. Who knows? And some people have told me, Larry, you can't argue with the preacher. He knows what he's doing. That becomes dangerous then when we say those kind of things. That becomes very dangerous because sometimes we do make mistakes. We all make mistakes. So we need to admit it, relearn it, and then keep on going. The Bible is complete. It is the source of all our judgment. This is what we'll be judged by, period. Then we get down to chapter 3. Here's where the divisions in the church have started to occur. Paul finally addresses the problems. Brothers, I could not address you as spiritual, but as worldly. Mere infants in Christ. I gave you milk, not solid food, for you were not ready for it. Indeed, you still are not ready. You are still worldly. For since there is jealousy and quarreling among you, are you not worldly? Are you not acting like mere men? For one says, I follow Paul. Another says, I follow Apollos. Are you not mere men? What, after all, is Apollos? What's Paul? Only servants through whom you came to believe. As the Lord has assigned to each his task, I planted the seed, Apollo watered it, God makes it grow. So neither he who plants nor he who waters anything is anything, but only God who makes things grow. The man who plants and the man who waters have one purpose, and each will be rewarded according to his own labor. For we are God's fellow workers. You are God's field, God's building. By the grace God has given me, I laid a foundation as an expert builder, and someone else is building on it. But each should be careful how he builds. For no one can lay any foundation other than the one already laid, which is Jesus Christ. If any man builds on this foundation using gold, silver, costly stones, wood, hay, or straw, his work will be shown for what it is, because the day will bring it to light. It will be revealed with fire, and the fire will test the quality of each man's work. If what he has built survives, he will receive his reward. If it is burned up, he will suffer loss. He himself will be saved, but only as one escaping through the flames. Don't you know that you yourselves are God's temple, and that God's Spirit lives in you? If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy him. For God's temple is sacred, and you are that temple. Do not deceive yourselves. If any one of you thinks he is wise by the standards of this age, he will become a fool so that he may become wise. For the wisdom of this world is foolishness in God's sight. As it is written, he catches the wise in their craftiness. And again, the Lord knows that the thoughts of the wise are futile. So then, no more boasting about men. All things are yours, whether Paul, Apollos, Cephas, or the world of life or death, or the present and the future, all are yours. And you are of Christ, and Christ is of God. That one verse down there in 12 builds on the foundation: gold, silver, costly stones, wood, hay, and straw. It's going to be burned in fire to reveal truth, right? Now, isn't it funny he uses those 6 words? Gold, silver, costly stones. Fire's not going to consume that, is it? Wood, hay, straw, that'll be consumed by fire. But what is Paul talking about? What would be a gold standard for our belief? Our cornerstone, Jesus. Jesus is the Son of God. That's the cornerstone. From it, the rest of the building is built. And Paul says, as an expert builder, I know. Now, what would be something as an example of silver? Except you are baptized under the remission of your sins. Wouldn't that probably be silver? That is another stone. What would be a costly stone? I guess a stone of great worth. You ever think about that? What would be an example of something like that? Pardon? Yeah. Rightly dividing the word of truth. Reading, studying the Bible. That would be another stone. in that basic foundation? What would be an example of wood or hay or straw? Well, let me give you another example. Jesus was a Jew, wasn't he? Jewish law, 8th day, they're circumcised. All male children. Therefore, if I'm going to be Christ-like, I need to be circumcised. Sounds logic, doesn't it? Sounds good. But nowhere in the New Testament are we given that command to be circumcised. So, in other words, I constructed a crafty, wise little argument for you and presented it to you that all males need to be circumcised if we're to be Christian. And you bought into it. See how subtle that is? Once that fire gets burned, that's going to be disappeared. It'll be gone. It'll be burned up. So if I was to try to teach that and to make you accept that, I am teaching error. And that's wrong. My salvation, I'm teaching it in ignorance. So my salvation is still secure in one sense. But if I come to believe it and I step off that path too much further, I am in danger of losing my salvation. Does that make sense? What about straw? Tithing. Should we tithe? The Jewish tradition was you gave 10%. That was the old law. We're under the new law. The new is always better than the old, isn't it? So under the new law, we should give more than 10%. Does that make sense? Pardon? Yeah. But what's the command in the New Testament? As you have prospered, as you purpose in your heart. Everything we have, God has given us. It belongs to Him in the first place. He wants to see the purpose in our heart. He wants to see the love in our heart. We give as we purpose. That one teacher I told you about that was Mormon, I was passing out the payroll check one time, and I gave it to Lewis, and then I turned around to hand it to my 3 biology teachers, and I noticed Lewis rip his open, and instead of looking over here at what he got paid, he went all the way over here and looked at it, and there was that amount. He moved the decimal place one over and wrote a check out. Gave exactly 10%. Now, me at the time, I was 1 year as a Christian. I put my $5 in the morning plate every Sunday. I felt proud. I saw him, and he had 5 kids. I only had 1. He had 5 kids. He couldn't afford this. But he didn't hesitate 1 second. He moved it over and did that. That made me sort of ashamed. I felt guilty. I was stealing from God. So I started upping my contribution. And I know in the Sunday school classes that I was attending, they were teaching us, as you purpose in your heart. We're not under a 10% guideline anymore. Okay. I found out the closer I got to 10% and even going over a little bit, I still felt good. God always finds a way to make certain that you're taken care of. Don't sacrifice your family. Don't sacrifice your wife and kids. Can you outgive God? No, you can't. Don't try, though, because you are got a responsibility here on this earth to take care of your family. But at the same time, you notice the argument I presented? Tithing, 10%, old law. Where in the new law, you should get 12, 15%. I can't make that requirement on you because the New Testament tells us, as you purpose in your heart. So I can't put a restriction on you. I can't do that. That's forbidden. What about something else? John 3:16 that I read. the King James, New King James, for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish. That word, shall, there are a lot of preachers, especially in the denomination, that show that this verse teaches once you believe, you are saved, and you cannot lose that salvation. The King James? Oh, okay. I thought it was the King James and the New King, because NIV. There's a couple of versions that do this. The correct translation of that word in there is should not. That is the word that should be translated, not shall. Because shall has an implication of finality. You can't change it. Once you believe, you have got salvation. John 3:16 does not teach that. Because if it did teach that, other verses later in the Bible, in the New Testament, would be contradicted. You have to believe. Then you have to repent of your sins and be baptized. And then walk in newness of life, rightly dividing the word of truth. You got to do all these things. It's not just one little thing, believe and you're saved. You can't just do that kind of stuff. There's more to it than that. My faith demands more. I got to study more. Does that make sense? Yes. That's it. Mm-hmm. I remember the very first baptism, quote unquote, that I saw. It was in a Presbyterian church. And the elders came, presbyters, whatever, they came forward, and this man was there, and they poured a little oil on his head, and they all massaged the laying on of hands. To them, this was baptism. And when I talked with the preacher about that, I mean, I was quite old. I was probably 9 years old when I saw that. But that bothered me. I said, wait a minute. The Bible teaches immersion. How did you immerse that man? I'm confused. A young child. Something's wrong here. It upset me. Shouldn't it bother us today? There are a lot of people that think sprinkling is good. There are a lot of people that believe christening of the babies. Babies are without sin. They don't need to be christened. When they become of age and learn right from wrong, they will decide what they will do. We can't be Mormons and baptize these kids into salvation. We shouldn't try to be doing it. So when I hear of this infant baptism or christenings or whatever you want to call it, it upsets me a little bit. I get my feathers get ruffled because I believe it totally wrong. Does that sound right? I'm not trying to spin a crafty argument here. I'm not trying to be wise or anything. I'm just trying to say, what does the Bible teach? Let's just do what the Bible says. The church at Corinth was God's temple. If you are involved in some sort of man-centered, I've heard a lot of great preachers preach. Harding University used to have a 13-in-1 workshop during the summers. For about 2 weeks, they had all the great brotherhood preachers coming, and they presented talks. Boy, could you get your drink full right there. A lot of great talks, a lot of great sermons. But there was a little bit of fighting going on, too. You'd hear one say one thing, and then the next one sounded like it was totally opposite. There was a little bit of backstabbing in a way, one-upmanship. but still they were great, great talks. I am not the product of one preacher. None of us are. Matter of fact, Chuck, as much as I like you, you're nothing to me except a source of information. I am not of Chuck. I am of the Church of Christ. Period. He provides me guidance. He provides me instruction. He helps me to find the path that I need to find to keep on going. Does that make sense? That's what we want. We want somebody to help point us, keep us on that path, and keep us going. That's what we're trying to do. That's the reason why I'm here to see you. I need you to help keep me going. We all need this, one way or another. Yeah. Yes. The bakers, Swagger.
Well, and then it was, everybody said, and it's true. I mean,
Yes.
I'm trying to get, but the idea that,
Yes, you can, if they are wrong.
they were wrong.
Yeah.
This is bad behavior.
Well, see, it's just like a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about the two preachers, Oldstein and Dollar. Dollar wanted his congregation to buy him that $60 million jet so he can go to various different conferences and talk so he can make more money. He only makes $1 or $2 million a year. And he wants his congregation to spend $60 million to buy him a plane. I'm sure he did. But do you ever listen to any of those talks that those people give? They tell you enough to tell you a few jokes, a couple of heartfelt stories to get your sympathy for them. They're getting their glory today. They're making their money. They don't want to upset that apple cart. So they're going to keep on telling those kind of stories because you can't put any truth into their voice. There is no truth. There is no substance. They're still preaching milk. That's what Paul said. I can't give you meat because you are still fighting, arguing with each other. You only need the milk. You need to develop. That's the reason why I kept saying, rightly dividing the word of truth. We need to study. We need to be chewing meat. Chuck can't get up here and give us platitudes every Sunday. Nothing but milk, toast. Yeah, I'll wear dentures, but I can eat a steak. So give me something strong. Now, then we come to the other side of the coin. These preachers. Chuck's got to be careful of his job because if he gets up here and gets too hard on us, well, let's get rid of Chuck now. I mean, where do we draw this line? This becomes a very, very difficult point. If we want the truth, we got to desire the truth. We got to study it. We got to learn it. Chuck is trying to provide us the way to get to it. He's trying to help us. That's what each one of us is trying to do. We need our individual insights, our own individual experiences to help form stronger Christian belief. Does that make sense? Then we get down into chapter 3 as we start going through all this. I noticed that all things are yours and you are of Christ and Christ is of God. So we're not boasting about men anymore. All things are yours. Everything in here is yours. But like Chuck said here about 3 weeks ago in the sermon. How many homes can you go into and find nothing but dust on these things sitting on the coffee table? Most homes in America have got Bibles, but how much has got dust on it? I know when I taught down there at Arlington Christian Schools, 7th grade Bible, I was up there and was talking, and one of the kids said, my book doesn't have that page. I took a look, and he was missing about 5 or 6 pages. So I took it and I threw it in the trash, and I went over to the shelf and got another book and gave it to him. All the kids in the class, you threw away the Holy Bible. Now, what does that tell you? 27 kids in that class. And almost everyone but 1 or 2 gasped that I threw a Holy Bible in the trash. What does that tell us? We have wrong teaching going on. And it's frustrating when people don't listen to the truth. So what do? We keep teaching. We keep going. We read more. We study more so we can present more. These people probably will never come to the truth. But that's not my call. My call is I'll either plant the seed, I'll water the seed, I'll do something like that. God will give the increase. That's the reason why I said here 3 or 4 weeks ago, I don't know of anybody that's ever come to Christ because of me. And I'm really not caring about that. But I like to think. Notice, I like to think. I planted a seed that somehow somebody else came in later behind me and was able to catch them at the right moment so that they could learn what the truth was and thereby become saved. I like to think that. Is it true? I don't know. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. And I think that's what each one of us. Our life is an example. People are looking to you, just like you watched your parents. You emulated your parents. You did the things your parents did. What about your kids? You notice that? Think back. Aren't they emulating you? To a lot of degrees, they are. They're going to follow in your footsteps. No greater thing than to realize you have done right. Does that make sense? Okay, I noticed that the clock says 1:45. Don't want to sit there and keep on preaching. I don't mean to do that, but I'm sorry, I just believe it. Thank you for your time and effort.